Sarah, just want to start there before we get into other issues. Would you support that? So just back things up. So it would be a cut for small business, which small business has been seeking for a while now. But your big businesses, your Woolies, CBAs, etc., well, they'd stay at 30%. Would you support that?
Well, the Coalition will always support any proposal for lower taxes. I'm glad that we are hearing from the government a proposal about lower taxes, because all we have heard from Jim Chalmers and the Prime Minister is a proposal for a big fat super tax, a big increase in tax. So I think that would be welcome. But of course, Pete, we will look at any proposal as it comes forward. OK, Donald Trump's August 1 trade deadline, it's centering its final hours now. Many nations, including us, we can't be certain what our final trade position is going to be. This comment this morning from Scott Bessent might suggest, though, that we remain at a 10% baseline. Let's just run this for you.
We've got the August 1st deadline coming up, and as we mentioned before, the rates could boomerang back to the April 2nd level.
If that does, and it's hard to get a read on this, Sarah, Australia hasn't specifically been named here, but we can assume that we're on 10%. Where are you on that this morning?
Well, Peter, we're very concerned that the Prime Minister has still not secured a meeting with President Trump. It's 270 days since the President was elected, and of course that's not just a diplomatic fail, but also a fail for jobs and for industry, and particularly those industries in the firing line, including copper, pharmaceuticals, aluminium and steel. So it's very, very concerning, and again we call for urgent action from this government to get its act together, because, of course, what is at risk, in contrast to when we were in government, when we secured an exemption for all tariffs, what's at risk is Australian jobs, and that is deeply concerning.
Would you be relieved, though, if we do boomerang back to 10%? Because there had been that threat last week that we might go to 15 or 20%.
What we want to see is an exemption from tariffs, and that's what we secured when we were in government, and that's, of course, what this government should also secure. It really is, as I say, a diplomatic fail, and of course we've also got the big black cloud over our beef industry now. So I think overall this government is doing a very poor job at standing up for our interests when it comes to trade with the United States. OK, on the state of Palestine, the government says it's just a matter of time now before we follow France, the UK and Canada. Are you of the view that we should continue to hold out? Well, look, obviously, Peter, I'm just going to show you what happened overnight. So this is an article from The Telegraph in the UK, and it's Hamas official recognising Palestine is a victory. And here's this article. So this is what's happened as a result of the UK making its announcement that it will prematurely recognise a Palestinian state before peace has been achieved. Now we have Hamas congratulating the UK. We really want to avoid something as terrible as that happening in this country. I did note the Prime Minister has been much more reluctant in terms of embracing premature recognition of Palestine, because, of course, a two-state solution, Peter, is all about ensuring that Palestine and Israel can exist side by side with peace and security. And at the moment, with Hamas in control in Gaza, Hamas's mission is to annihilate Israel, and so there is no possible way that the coalition supports the recognition of Palestinian statehood when we've got hostages in tunnels and, of course, this threat over Israel.
Is there consensus on that, Sarah? Because there is a report in The Australian this morning that suggests, and it points out the Shadow Foreign Minister Michaelia Cash's position, saying perhaps members of the Liberal Party are saying everything shouldn't be a support Israel at all costs kind of approach. Is that true? Is there any discontent behind the scenes, or is everyone on the same page within the Liberal Party?
Look, I think there's deep concern about some of the terrible scenes that we have seen coming out of Gaza, the suffering and children starving. But, of course, we've also seen hundreds and hundreds of containers of food inside Gaza that are not being distributed, but despite Israel's best efforts. So the UN has not sought armed guards and the like, so that that food can be distributed. Certainly aid, the increase of aid is going into Gaza, supported by the UAE and Jordan. So that is deeply concerning. But as we know, this is being primarily looted by Hamas. It's been sold off. And so that is awful that we are seeing this situation. But we have been very, very strong and united. There must be peace in Gaza and in the Middle East, and that is paramount before a Palestine state can be announced.
Just to wrap up now, Sarah, the student debt bill passed. You made a stand this week to make amendments. It was unsuccessful. Any regrets about that?
Not at all, because the great thing about being a Liberal is that we can prosecute differing policy from the formal coalition policy from the backbench. Of course, the only reason the student debt discount of 20% was even necessary was because we saw skyrocketing student debt under Labor over the last 3 years. So this is just a catch-up measure. What I put forward was a proposal to cap indexation for all help debts at 3%. This was policy largely supported by many of my colleagues. The Shadow Minister, the new Shadow Minister, made that very point in his contribution. So I'm really hoping it does become coalition policy.
Sarah Henderson, thanks so much. We'll chat to you again soon.